Welcome to the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Harper, and today I am super excited to be joined by my good friend from Down Under, Karen Ansen. Karen is an infinitely interesting entrepreneur, as you are going to learn today. I first knew her as an HR and employment lawyer. She owns a firm called Ignite HR and Employment Law, and she also owns a company called Ignite Your Purpose, where she focuses on breath work, meditation, and retreats. Karen and I connected, and we have been rippling for the last few months. She is a dynamo. She considers herself an ordinary Aussie girl that just happens to make a difference every day as an employment lawyer. But I think she is anything but ordinary. She is extraordinary. She is a dynamic individual, and I can't wait for you to meet her. I am super excited that we can finally make this work. We've been trying to put this together for a few months. Schedule conflicts, time zone differences. She's getting up early. I'm staying late so that we can get this interview recorded just for you. So with no further ado, let's dive into this amazing interview with Karen Ansen. Guys, I am so excited to have Karen join us for the Ripple Effect Podcast. Karen, how are you doing? Good evening for you, or good morning for you, good evening for me, right?
7 a.m. here in Australia.
I appreciate you getting up so early to do this.
Look, we have a lifestyle where we kind of get up at 5. I read that book once, 5 a.m. Club.
Yeah.
And so it really affected our lives. And we do a lot before 7.
You and me both. I'm usually at the gym before 5 o'clock. So I get up at like 4:15, 4:20, kind of middle around a little bit. Then I head to the gym. But I find that I get more work done before 7 a.m. than most people do all day. So
I was going to say I got into that habit because you know a little bit about my story, but I did all in my 40s. And my children were still obviously young at home. And so I would get up at sort of 3 o'clock to get that, time in. So I worked full time.
wow. And you've just kept the habit.
Crazy. Yeah, as much as I can sleep in on the weekend, I do. But yeah.
I love it. Well, I am so excited to have this opportunity to visit with you because you are a hard nut to crack. You are a really interesting entrepreneur. I am so intrigued by all that you're doing, both through your practice and then obviously with what you're doing with with your other platform, Ignite Your Purpose. And so give us just a little sense of your background and sort of, what led you down the entrepreneurial path that you find yourself on today.
Well, it's interesting because I've always been one of those people that just lived in, I would call it the box. I worked in government for 20 years. And when I look at my journey, every single part of my journey led me to where I was, but I almost came kicking and screaming to being an entrepreneur because I think I was just over working in the machine is the only way I could describe it. I felt like I was just a cog in a wheel. There was so much of me that I wasn't able to be in those roles I had. And it was a slow burn to a certain degree, I guess. But when in 2019, when I realised that I had to do something, I was working 60-hour weeks, no boundaries. It was, one of those things where you kind of wake up, and it literally was the most clarity I've ever had. Was I just have to start my own business.
So were you working for a firm at that point and just working 60 plus hours a week and just in the machine, right?
Yeah, it was, but I had to learn all those things to get to where I was so confident to start my own firm. So I worked in a HR company. I was the only employment lawyer with about 30 HR practitioners. And I was the only one that they would come to with all the legal had a lot of clients, as you can imagine. But there was a consulting. So this consulting angle taught me how to do sales, how to do customer service, how to put proposals together. So I put all my legal expertise, my client expertise, and then that piece was the final piece for me. Yeah. So then I was able to have proposals and I was able to do consulting in a way that I could do it myself.
Was there something that happened in 2019 that just sort of you just knew now was the time? If it wasn't now, I would never do it. Or was there something that occurred that maybe just kind of forced your hand to decide, hey, now it's time to hang my own shingle?
I I had a lot of trouble in my career getting what I needed from leaders.
Okay.
Very not much mentoring, looking although I'm an incredibly independent person, and I realised that that is because I as a child, I had to become that way. So I very rarely ask for help. And look, that's a problem a lot of people have, particularly women. So, I'm not alone there, I'm sure. But, it was the moment of clarity where I was doing the 60-hour weeks. They kept pushing for more. They kept saying, "Oh, you don't need as much admin help. You don't, it's okay for you to just drop everything and drive 3 hours for a meeting, come home," and I don't know if you know where I live. I can't imagine what the traffic's like where you are, but where I live is probably where I was living at the time, was extremely traumatic in terms of the traffic. It was long commute. On a perfect day, it would take me an hour and a half to get to work.
Ugh.
But if there was a big accident on the main M1 road, I'd be on there for 2 or 3 hours.
Ugh.
It was just horrendous. I remember saying to my husband there was a couple of things. I'm either going to become a statistic on that road or I'm going to go mad. There's only so many podcasts you can listen to. There's only so many. But yeah, so, and it wasn't even a big fight that I had with, they'd put in this person that was managing my area. And I guess he was brought in to make more money. But
Yeah.
that wasn't made clear to me. It was sort of sold to me, oh, he's an extra resource, this kind of thing. Anyway, um, there was a moment where they've taken all of my admin off me. I just went, you know what? I'm sitting up till 9 o'clock at night. I've got my gorgeous husband beside me. I am completely vacant. He can't speak to me because I'm so ingrained in what I'm doing. People's legal problems. I'm trying to get work in. And I just realised it was just too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it anymore. I had no boundaries, Steve. I had no way of being able to speak up for what I wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, just one of those moments. And then the 3 months after that, I was so scared to even put a website together or anything. I was just, and then COVID hit in February
Yeah.
in the 2020. So that kind of
You're like, oh,
was,
what was I thinking, right? Probably at that point, like, oh my God.
oh my God. Then I started looking for work. And no one would give me a job. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, okay. I have to do this now.
Yeah. You burn the boat. It's time to go, right?
Oh my God, it was so funny. And what it did for families that time. I had one grandson at the time, and I'd committed to the Monday him. So I had only 4 days a week to try and make money. And so, it was a lovely time when I think back in some ways because I had that complete day with him, which I don't get anymore. I've got three grandsons, but it was very special in that way, and I was able to kind of his family and my business. And, you know, a lot of people come forward and say, we love what you do, let's work together. And it wasn't too stressful. It was just, you know, although I didn't have any admin. So I had to do all my own again.
Yeah. Well, at least you're
But yeah,
doing it now for yourself, and the payoff is there, right?
with AI, you don't need to, you know, formatting documents, legal AI helps you with all of your research, pull documents together so much quicker. You know, it's revolutionised most people's careers, I think.
I love it. Well, let's take a step back. What was it about the law that originally interested you?
Um, it was a strange kind of trajectory. Um, Again, it was the catalyst of a terrible boss, I think.
The makings of every great entrepreneurial career journey, right?
And I remember him saying to me, "You are the worst time manager of anyone I've ever met." And I thought, I never thought about it, but I'm a typical extreme extrovert with one of those brains that is all over the shop. I'm always doing 10 things at once, you know, thinking about things. And I was still like that back then, but didn't know how to harness it, you know. So he said to me, off to TAFE. TAFE is, I don't know what they think of in America of TAFE, but it's not university. It's like a community college, I guess, anyway, I could describe it. So I went off to TAFE. This lovely guy who was teaching, he said to me, I said, look, what if I wanted to do a law degree? Can you teach me with time management how to do that? I said, you know, I do a lot of commuting. I've got 2 kids. My husband works 6 days a week. I don't have a lot of help with my family. How am I going to do this? There's no one going to show
Yeah.
me how to do it. So he made me do a 3 month, 12 month, 5 month goals, 5 year goals.
Wow.
Um, and I took it home and I remember saying to my husband, I think I can do this. Anyway, but the problem was, this is so funny. I don't think I've ever told this to anybody. The day in year 12, which is, you know, end of high school before you go to uni,
Yeah.
I'd done all the courses that could give me credit to get to university. But the day that they had this exam that would give you a regulated score so that you could get in,
Uh-huh.
my girlfriends and I took the day off. We just decided we weren't going. No, what was wrong with me? But nobody seemed to care. Like my parents weren't like, "Oh, girl, you're like get to university." There was no one going. You know, it was the weirdest thing. My brother and my sister, both of them supported, very bright, told them very bright. Not me. Anyway, it was a thing. So I had to go and do a 12-month course before I did 9 years.
Okay.
So to get in, because I couldn't apply without
Yeah.
those skills. So I did that, but it was actually a blessing because it taught me how to do referencing. It taught me I did a law subject and an Australian history subject, and they fit very well together because I actually did a couple of Indigenous law subjects at uni and got high distinctions. Loved it. Thought it was, you know, I guess I'm a bit of a history buff, and it brings it together. And law's a lot about history, understanding that history and things like that. Yeah, yeah. So there you go.
So what was it about that led you down the path of really kind of HR and employment laws? Because that's a pretty specialized field, right? And you know, I don't know how it is in Australia, but I do know here in the US, those attorneys are in high demand because there's just so much turmoil, right? Especially now with
Yeah,
a lot of layoffs and
100%.
mergers and acquisitions and just unscrupulous practices in a lot of businesses, right? What was it that led you down that path specifically to, kind of focus on that as your primary area?
So what happened was when I left, after I'd done that course, I'd done the time management course, I was looking around for something. And there was a government department called Industrial Relations at the time. And I applied and got it, even though I had no background whatsoever. And I hadn't started doing law. And it was really fortuitous for me that what happened was the guy that ran that department, he allowed me to go to university and he gave me extra study leave so that I could manage my kids and the crazy life that I had and be able to do exams and all of the things. I had to go on site for a week every term to, to actually be, because I'm actually a kinesthetic learner. Do you know much about learning styles? So, I, not auditory, not visual. I have to do to learn things. So I have to immerse myself. I had to go to the university and sit in the lectures. I then had to go away and read it, and then I had to go and teach someone about it. So my 15-year-old son at the time, he was brilliant. Just listened to my crazy arguments, and we would Google every Latin word, and it was just hilarious. He did really well at school, in high school, but he's now a teacher.
Yeah.
I kept saying to him, he's a great arguer. He should be a lawyer.
Yeah.
But so the employment law side of it, it's a very odd, um, it, what do you call it? Not employment. It's a very odd career for women to get into Australia. There's very few of us. Our industrial laws are much more crazy than yours, I have to say. We have a very regulated industry. The Fair Work Commission basically manages all of our employment laws. We have federal court that sort of oversees that. But, it was one of those careers. So I did very well, even though it was very, in industrial relations, I worked there for 7 years. And because I was doing my law, I finished law the day it actually made me redundant, the 11th to the 11th, 2011.
Oh,
And it was really like one of those moments. I thought I finished my law degree, I'd been made redundant, and I actually loved my job because it was about giving people, because there's a lot of fear around litigation, getting into trouble with underpayments of wages, because the fines here are huge.
yeah.
Over $200,000 for underpayment of wages claims. If you get something wrong, they have a section of the Fair Work that deals with adverse action. So, and there's a weird kind of rule there where the onus of proof is on the person that allegedly did it. So you have to prove you didn't do it. It's the other way around
Yeah.
instead of the normal onus of proof. So we have all these weird laws that people are terrified of. Right? And you talk to any employer, and part of my role really is to go, okay, this is going to be a difficult process, but I will guide you through it. We've got this, but you're going to have to deal with your own emotions, the fear, the worry of the money, all of that stuff. So that kind of led me down a path, particularly with applicants, individuals that take that, because I do both employer and employee stuff, um, where I kind of started to unpack how people got to that point. And that's what's kind of led me to this Ignite Your Purpose, if that makes sense.
It does. Like
So
with your
married
prior
the
firm,
law.
you couldn't do everything to support them, but now it looks like with you, you're kind of like you're able to come full circle to provide not only the legal advice but also support the person through the process.
That's right, and unpack for them the fear that led them to where they are. Because a lot of people are walking around with so much baggage, and they feel the only way to give them power back, themselves power back, is maybe to take legal action. And of course, there are instances where there are terrible things that happen to people, and that's absolutely not their fault. But there are a lot of people that, for example, that claim that they've been bullied, or whatever it might be. And know, I have to kind of walk them through the understanding sometimes that there's always two sides to a story, and sometimes it's the reaction that you're having in the workplace to certain things, and there are ways to resolve it, personally and professionally. Not trying to take away from bullying or anything like that, but I'm just saying there are ways, to unpack it for people that they can understand their reaction to things at times. Yeah, which helps them.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the way that you explain it right there, the way I look at it is, and I kind of equate it to a few folks that I know that are lawyers that really go the extra mile for their clients, is that they don't treat them like a transaction, right? It's not just a circumstance. It's for someone to do it or to take on, their employer or go after a former employer. It's a huge emotional burden, and you help navigate that process for them so that they can make the right decision, whether it makes sense to do it or go forward or whatever. But what I love about what I heard you say is that you really get on the same side of the desk with them, and you relate to them as individuals, and you help them understand, okay, here's all the potential ways that this might work out, so that you're prepared both emotionally, physically, mentally, financially, because some of those challenges can be pretty significant, I would imagine. And so have someone like you on that same side, working in tandem with the client, I think is really unique and
Yeah.
powerful.
It's interesting. I had a situation this week where it really backfired. And, it's the first time since I kind of integrated my approaches where the person really wasn't happy.
Yeah,
They said, they sometimes you want a bulldog, right? You want somebody when you're paying for a lawyer. Sometimes you do want a bulldog.
sure.
So that needs to be communicated. I kind of when I was talking to them, this person had been injured at work. There was a whole steps that happened after that, and there's a whole piece around what happens when you actually get out of the job. You've got your compensation. Who are you? How do you unpack what happened? Is there any personal ownership of my story moving forward into a new employer? And I say to people, what you don't bloody heal will come back over and over and over again. So people say to me, oh, it's happened again, the same situation. And I said, because you haven't changed the pattern.
Yep.
I had to recognize it in myself. Well, I had to recognize it in myself, that victim mentality. I definitely had that. It was always someone else's fault. When something happened to me at work, it was always someone else's fault. And I didn't realize that I'd been doing it a long time, and yeah, so it's one of those things. It did backfire this week, but it's okay.
Well, the fact that you could recognize that in yourself and know that that was or presented challenges for you in your prior work life, right? It probably makes you a really excellent sounding board for those that are kind of going through it, right? Because, like you said, a lot of times you see people that, when they get laid off or they get fired for the exact same reasons, they want to blame everybody, but they don't want to look in the mirror and see, okay, what was my part in this, or what was my role or responsibility in my circumstance?
The thing is what do I learn from this as well? Because it's not always everything, every step that happens. There's sometimes some stuff going on in the background you don't even know about.
Yep.
So I mean, I probably have terminated, you know, maybe 1,000 people in my life, right? It'd be
That's a
probably more. I don't even know. There's so many. And I had a great conversation with a guy the other day, aged care worker, and he, it was he was so passionate about what he did. But the problem was his delivery of anything that went wrong was incredibly aggressive in the workplace. I mean, aged care, working in someone's home, you have to understand that. This is not a facility. This is not a
Yep.
someone's home, and they deserve to have peace. And I'm not talking about the way they were treating the residents. It was the way they were treating co-workers or anyone that challenged them for any reason. It was an escalation all the time. And I remember saying to this guy, like, you know, I hear you. And see, this is the thing. A lot of HR people are frightened to make an observation about somebody for fear that they're going to take it in the wrong way. But the way that I put it, it's my observation. It's my way of the way I'm thinking. It's what I'm seeing, and that's a really good tip for any manager. This is what I'm seeing. Talk to me about. Am I right or am I wrong? Or what's your stance on it? And you keep kind of unpacking it until they go, oh,
Oh,
actually, I
yeah.
get it. I
You
get
had
it.
that off at the moment.
And you know what? There's that matter the other day, and the HR person I'd never worked with before, and she wrote back to me and she goes, "Oh my God, that was awesome." And I just said to her, "Look, we just had a conversation. That's all we did." And it was what changed my life in terms of how I deliver this stuff was I stopped trying to get an outcome, right? Trying to manipulate an outcome. What I want to do is facilitate a conversation. You drop in legal bits in the middle because people need to understand they're on a legal process,
Mm-hmm.
but then come to a conclusion. If the conclusion is they still do not have not moved from their position, then that's okay too.
Sure.
You know, you must have had that experience yourself. You've got employees, yeah.
When you talk about it, it's even when I was back like as an employee and I maybe wasn't doing that good a job, the leaders that stood out to me were the ones that actually took the time to tell you why you weren't doing well or what you needed to do differently. Not that you were doing it wrong or threaten you with your job or somehow make it personal by, that it's your, intelligence or your lack of ability to grasp something, which automatically puts people on their back heel. It was always about, I love how you phrased it. This is what I'm seeing, and I could be wrong or I could be partially right, but here's what I see, and invite them into conversation about that. And oftentimes, when you lead people down that path and it's non-confrontational and it's wrapped in some substantive fact, right? But you lead them into conversation and you invite them into the pool where they can have their say and they can give their side of an incident or an issue or whatever, and you're completely engaged in, hey, how do we find our way through this, right? How do I lead you to a better outcome or potentially help you figure out how to correct maybe some behavior that needs to be improved or a work habit that,
Because people can smell a conversation that they know is going somewhere in particular, that you're being set up
yep,
because every question that you're asked is leading you to an answer.
yep,
Whereas being inquisitive, not being afraid of the answer, because a lot of times litigation comes from people not having said what they needed to say, not being heard from
yep.
what they needed to express. And, the most difficult people I've ever dealt with, and I mean, some of the matters, most of my matters last short term, but I've had matters that have gone on for over a year. And you just have to keep chipping away, chipping away, chipping away at things. The most difficult people, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. is you just have to ask one question. And you don't, sometimes I don't even know what that question is until all of a sudden you're kind of asking questions, asking questions. And then one question, and it's like the mask comes off. And then they're like, whether it's angry or whatever, you've got them then. You've got them in where it is that you need them to be to have a productive conversation. Because I've said to people, humans aren't throwaway items, you know. As an employment lawyer, I know that sounds like a strange thing to think. But I just, as much as I have terminated, more than 1,000 people in my life, I'm a huge believer in redemption of relationships.
Yep.
But there has to be a want on both sides. Have you heard a lot of the terms around people when they become underminers in your organisation? So the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all that kind of stuff. There's also a theory that when people are operating at their highest, you're giving them autonomy, feedback, all the tools that they need. They're able to make decisions, all of the things, all of the great things. But for whatever reason, and it usually starts at the beginning of an employment relationship, people, for whatever reason, I have a huge view on onboarding, right? If you promise someone something, you don't deliver. That chips away from the very first day they start. You promise that the organisation's got a certain culture, and the first person they meet at the water cooler is, well, I'm going to use sweat, a dickhead.
Oh yeah, you can.
You don't use the word dickhead in America, do
Oh,
you?
we use it all the time. I
Oh,
used
do
it
you?
twice before lunch today. So
I watch a lot of British shows. I'm a bit over American television at the moment. Have you ever watched a show called Brassic? This is an FYI.
no.
Brassic, you have to watch it.
Okay.
One of the you need the subtitles on, but
Okay.
because it's Northern England and they're so hard to understand. Anyway, there's some colourful language in that, but it's super fun and yeah, I've been watching that. That's what's been keeping me sane at the moment. But yeah, so the first person you meet, doesn't have the culture you describe, for
Yeah.
example. I mean, not everyone's going to have that. But in general, if you say, we're great culture, we're friendly, we go out for drinks on a Friday night, we do blah, 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 and then they never get invited, you know, and then it chips away from the very first day. And then, they don't get their review at 6 months and they don't know how to. And then all of a sudden, they start to kind of gravitate to the more negative group and they all come together and then they become underminers. And they are probably, I mean, they can move from that underminer. Very difficult to do. But there has to be some personal responsibility that they took that road, and talk about their experience.
Yeah. If you have a leadership team that maybe has a underperformer and they're whether they're moving on from them or not, there's lessons to be learned so that they can become better as a leadership organization or improve the culture. If we're pitching people on this great family culture environment and your first week or your first day and you're realizing you're not meeting people that look at all like family you'd want to have, you start to have some resentment, right? And I always tell my audience when I talk to people like this, especially human dynamics is challenging anyway, right? But if you're sold a bill of goods and then you arrive and you realize that you were sold a bill of goods, you get resentful for it. And that'll manifest in ways that will come out in your attitude, your work product, etc. And I always tell my audience, like resentment, a definition that I have for it is it's the super secret promise of revenge. If you tell somebody that they're coming to work somewhere and they were going to get, X amount of time off or promotions, or there was going to be this level of culture and those things don't manifest,
Yeah.
it will manifest in resentment, and that'll come back to bite you because they'll either not be the best performer or they'll talk, like you said, with the bad crowd, or they fall into that, that arena, and you can derail the company, right? Completely.
It's funny because when I talk to people often when they're in that situation and I say, I don't doubt you get out of bed every morning and find a way to be a great person and try and reset, and then every day you then find a reason not to.
Yeah. And they help
You've
it.
used everything in your toolbox. Do you know what I mean? So I call it your toolbox because we all have, every difficult person that you've ever dealt with, you try ignoring it. Then you try addressing it in some way. A lot of people are really these days frightened of confrontation. They avoid it like the
Yeah.
plague. I have a view that healthy conflict is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
You have to have it. And, people are frightened of it. And that's why we've got a culture in our business, in our workplaces, a lot of the time where people just avoid it, and either they leave or they cause problems, or and that to me, I'm not sure how it happened because I know it wasn't around when I first started work in the 80s. I think there was much more of a hierarchical, where you knew your place. I was a secretary. I'm not a very good one. Probably the worst secretary anyone ever had. But I could do 100 words a minute shorthand when I left high school, so that's what I did. And back in those days, do you remember the first typewriters
Oh yeah.
with the
Yeah.
little screen?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many letters I rewrote. 1983, I hit work. Oh, yeah, but it was a very different time.
It was, and I think even back then, like you said, there was a hierarchy. There was also a kind of a standard. I think that in those corporate environments, right, where everybody kind of knew just the rules of engagement, and then things got different. They got weird, and they're even more weird now because they're far more organic and I'll say loosey goosey, which I think probably creates opportunity as well as challenges for the work that you do. I tell people all the time, especially when I speak to leadership teams about what I do, is that I bet you there's nobody that I ever talked to that ever had somebody take them by the hand and said, okay, kid, let me show you how to get along with the other kids in the sandbox. And that's yet the most essential thing that you need. You need somebody to show you how to communicate, how to engage, how to say something when you see something's wrong, how to provide feedback without, coming across as overtly critical, how to engage with other human beings so that everybody can stay focused on the goal, the mission ahead, right? And a lot of times I think organizations really miss the boat because they don't equip people when they come in with those skills. They assume that you and I could, be working in a cubicle together and we're automatically going to get along, but we won't if we haven't taken the time to get to know each other or we've spent any time to understand the skills that it takes to get to know one another and do it with respect and obviously intention and purpose. But really at the end of the day, we're going to rely on one another to do our jobs. And, organizations in a big way, I think, miss that. And I think that's a big challenge. Creates opportunity for you, also creates opportunity for me because you end up losing a lot of key talent. Either sadly you get the wrong people that stay and that has its ramifications, or you have great people that are like, screw this isn't anything like you said it was going to be, I'm going to go to the next opportunity. You miss a lot of great individuals that could be real pillars to building the organization even more so than it's been built to this point. And you let them escape because you didn't do what you said you should do, right?
That's right, yeah. Feedback, that point you made about feedback is huge because, people often don't know how to give feedback well, and or they avoid doing it. And I mean, it's so funny the conversations I have with my husband. He decided about 7 years ago that he was going to give up his corporate job and open up a little mechanical workshop.
Oh, nice.
God help me. And it was like, what are you doing? But he is the worst feedback giver I've ever met. He's very direct, and but he's got a huge heart and people love him.
Yep.
So that's why in his business he does everything opposite to what I would like him to do.
Yep.
But because he's such a good person and such a hard worker, the young men that he's employed just look up to him and want to do well, right? They don't get very much feedback, and if they do, it's not very good. You know? And I just think it's hilarious that that we can operate in such a different way, but
Sure.
be great partners. That he's learned a lot from me. I've learned a lot from him. The thing that I learned about entrepreneurship from him was that men and women are very different the way that we operate. Men in some ways just are so bold and just they have a certain belief in themselves. Whereas I think a lot of women, we won't put ourselves out there until we're sure we know what we're talking about and what
Yep.
we're doing, and that we will succeed. And when we don't succeed, we kind of stick our toe in and go, "Oh God, that was a failure. I don't want to do it now." But you have to get out of bed every day. And my husband, he said to me, I remember when I first started the business, he said, "You don't see in yourself what other people see in you." And I thought, interesting, because I thought I was a pretty confident person. But this journey I've been on, for the last 5 years has been nothing short of transformational. Because I have to. I'm the only person that can try myself, And I'm actually working on my own at the moment. I don't have any staff. I've been working on my own. I've got a few people that I consult with, and in my other business, Ignite Your Purpose, I work with other coaches and things like that. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. Lots of different ways.
Yeah, I love how you frame that though, because at the end of the day, really, when you have when you become that entrepreneur and there's nobody else to blame, you're either living with the results, positive or negative, right? It's on you. It does give you a different perspective. I know that I've had those moments in my career where you know, I, I didn't have anybody else I could share the blame with, right? If I made a
Mhm.
poor decision or did something that had a negative impact to the business, it was on me. But also at the same time, when I was able to follow my path because I know prior bosses or whatever wouldn't have gone the way or made the decisions that I made, I roll the dice and I'm the one that live with the consequences. And fortunately for me, and it sounds like for you as well, knock on wood, we've made more of those decisions and had positive results because of it, which has, led us to being successful entrepreneurs, which is great. I love how you framed it. It is more difficult, I think, for women because they're a lot more cautious because they're more intentional. I think, and all the women that I work with, I know that there's dynamics. Women don't, a lot of times don't get along with other women, and there are challenges there. There's always the, hey, I'm looking at it through a lens of suspicion, sort of trying to,
Mhm. Yeah.
kind of keep an arm's length distance. But they're very cautious in how they play. Like if it was a chessboard, they're very intentional about the moves that they're making. Whereas men, we're just not all that bright. We just go in there and just blast through the
I love
board,
how
right?
you say that. I've heard you say that before. I had to laugh. We're not all that bright.
Well,
I
but
don't think it's that.
we're slow learners, but when we do learn it, it becomes really important. And I think I would think some of the people that I put up on kind of the best leadership and ripple pedestals I would build. Most of them are women entrepreneurs that have showed how to create opportunity, show courage, and like you said, actually how to be brave and lead with purpose. I love how you shared that in your email to me because they are really doing that. And if you wake up and pay attention, whether you're a female or a male, doesn't really matter, but you find those people that are out there doing it. Success leaves clues, and you pay attention to how they're doing it and learn from it, and then go apply your own brand, your own approach to that, and you'll find that you'll be more successful more often than not.
Yeah. Look, the one thing, it's so strange. When I first started my business, my intention was to create a safe space because I'd never found that in my career. I'd never found a truly safe space that I could come to and learn and feel supported I had one job, I think, in the whole time when I first started. After I finished law, I went and I worked for an organisation in aged care, and for about a year, it was amazing, and everyone was kind of just operating at that highest level, and we're all doing our own thing. It was amazing, but we all came together, and it was fantastic. But I and someone said to me, "Why would you start a business to create a safe space? Don't you want to bloody make $1 million?" And I said,
Well, at this phase of the interview, I always like to transition because I could talk to you for hours. I think we definitely are going to have to do a follow up interview for this because I love the work you're doing. I actually, before we even go there, just tell me a little bit about Ignite Your Purpose. So you obviously have the firm, right? The firm is called Ignite HR and Employment Law, and then you have a second business called Ignite Your Purpose. Tell us just a real quickly about that.
so Ignite Your Purpose. I've managed to kind of meld the businesses together in a lot of respects. So what I am doing, not as much as I probably should because I'm pretty busy with the law stuff, but the business itself really helps. Particularly aged care. I've got a program that I run that's an online program for leaders. Basically, it's just about all the things that have helped me get to where I am in terms of the the practices, the morning practices that I do, and being able to unpack for them what breath work can do, positive affirmations, setting goals, doing all of the things, and that really I call it getting out of your own way, getting out of your own head, being able to live a heart led life, and be able to be the leader, I guess, that is more authentic. Because I think a lot of the time you model what people think they need, or all the stuff that's going on in your subconscious. You're still operating from old patterns, and just recognizing that that's what you're doing. So we do all sorts of there's all sorts of practices that I teach people. But yeah, it depends on what it is that they're suffering from, I guess. What's debilitating them being all they can possibly be in their job. Yeah.
So do people find you because of your law practice and then you connect them to what you're doing on this side? Or is it people that you've worked with in the past that are still struggling, maybe in some capacity, to kind of find that inner spark that they need to find that next career
It's a bit of,
opportunity?
it's a bit of both. I do I've done a few coaching sessions, individuals. It could be a group, a leadership group. What I ideally want to do is run retreats, so a lot of corporate retreats, get involved in that. We've got some beautiful venues here in Australia. You can do amazing retreats. I love Byron Bay. If you've never been there, you need to go.
Yeah, I could definitely see you being a magical facilitator for those kinds of things because you have I love
Yeah.
how you've taken your entrepreneurial journey, obviously your work journey, and turned that into an entrepreneurial journey and the lessons that you learned along the way and just the impact that it's had. And this to me, I think it was funny because I was sharing this with one of my friends that happens to be an attorney. I was talking to her about this interview, and she said that one of the things that she saw as a natural fit was how you were moving towards sort of this mindfulness practice and helping people, de-stress and learn how to cope with some of the challenging environments. Maybe that led them to you in the first place because of a bad work situation. But as opposed to what lawyers do, which, basically once the case is resolved, then you're done. But you actually have the ability to kind of carry them forward and help them into this next phase of their life or handle circumstances differently than they have in the past. I think it's awesome. So you have one attorney in the U.S. that knows about your work already and is already inspired. So I thought that might bring a smile to your face.
My secret goal is to come over and do some rippling
Yes. Yeah. Put Austin on the
somehow.
map. You got to come see us
Somehow.
in Austin for sure.
Love to. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. I've never been there. Well, we did the tour. We did America, but all the big highlights. We've never been. I love some of the footage from the shows over there. Yeah, where you live, it's amazing because you live right near the beach, right?
Well, we're about 4 hours away, right? So yeah, Texas,
Oh, are
everything is
you?
far away. Yeah, Austin is kind of in the heart of Texas, so we're about 4.5 hours away from the
Yeah.
beach. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
it's still a great
Fair
place to
way.
visit. Still fun. I was going to say we've had somebody on this show a couple of times. Her name's Chloe Splain, and she's an HR consultant, and she's done really well over there. But she's made it a personal journey that she's now coming and spending time in the States for about 6 months and ramping up her business here in the U.S. And I
Oh,
thought,
wow.
I need to connect you two because A, you're both,
That'd be amazing.
from the same part of the world, but also kind of focused in a similar capacity. And I think you two would
Yeah.
really, really hit it off. And she loves it. In fact, when she came out to New York for the first time, she knew nobody. She basically booked this apartment like online and just like crossed her fingers that it was going to be a legit thing when she got there. She spent 6 months really, really, just getting to know America and just all the opportunities were here. Just did a tremendous amount of work in a short period of time. Went back and actually just came back to the U.S. Last 2 weeks ago, I think, is her. And so she'll be here for another six months just to, continue to build the business. But the neat thing about it is, all the ripples that she's been able to create across the countries and be able to take people that she's meeting in the US and bring them back into opportunities in Australia and vice versa. And so it's been really fun to see her. And I could see you two just really jamming in a big, big way. So I'll have to make that connection happen.
I just loved getting to know your community and just what you have created.
Uh,
In all honesty, I'm so grateful that I reached out that day and you saw something in my email because I imagine you get a lot of emails. And yeah, so no, I'm very grateful, and I intend to just share through your Wow network and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Be
And we're
creative. I'd
grateful
love to
that you're
create
in it. But
videos. Yeah.
you are a dynamo, and I just can't wait to continue to see ways that we can, work together to support each other. I think what we're going to do at this point, I think I'd like to ask for a second opportunity to interview you, and we'll get into the ripple a little bit because I think, the time that we spent today, I want to be respectful of your day because yours is just starting.
Mm.
We'll wrap this up and we'll find another time to record part two of this interview because I would love to ask you some ripple questions. But most importantly, I'd like you to share with our audience just how people can find you. For those of you that are in the pond, Karen's there now, so definitely reach out to her. She's got her profile set up, so look for her. But how else, for those that are just hearing this, that are either going to listen to this on the podcast platforms or see the video on YouTube, how would you like them best to either follow you on social or in what capacity?
Sure. So LinkedIn, I've got a lot of content on LinkedIn.
Great
It's a
content
lot of
too, by
stuff.
the way. Excellent
Yeah,
content.
thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, I tell you what, it wasn't easy. Video. You do a lot of video yourself, and you know, you never when you first start looking at yourself, you never like your voice, you never like the way you do, like nothing,
No.
right? So whoever's out there who doesn't want to do videos, just dive in and do it.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it. It's one of those things. Yeah, but so LinkedIn and I've got Facebook and all the other stuff. But Ignite Your Purpose, Ignite HR and Employment Law. I'm the only one in Australia. Not
Okay.
hard to find.
Well, we'll put those links in the show notes. Karen, I am
Terrific.
so grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for the fact that you reached out to me initially and that we did finally make this happen. It took us a little bit, but I appreciate your patience
Yeah,
as
I
we
know.
navigated.
I just quickly before you go, I just want to ask how your dad was.
He's doing better. In fact, he's almost fully recovered from pneumonia and the COVID that he had. Fortunately, he had a mild case of
Oh,
it, which was
dear
good. But he is back at home. But believe it or not, I'll tell you just a really quick story, a really cool connection. I bought a Royal typewriter. You were talking about the typewriter earlier. It made me
me.
smile. I took it to Albuquerque. I bought it in Albuquerque a few years back, and I bought it because it was from his birth year. It's a Royal 1934 manual typewriter, obviously. And I had taken it back. I had it refurbished and, purchased it and brought it back to Austin. And, I'd talked to him over the years about it. He's like, I'd sure like to see it. And started to realize that his time or opportunity probably to come to Austin to hang out is probably that window's starting to close. And so
Yeah.
when I went to see him the last time, I said, hey, I'm going to bring it so you can take a look at it. And man, when I opened that thing, it was like he put his glasses on. He's blind, pretty blind, but very engaged, and he was so enamored with it. Like he just couldn't believe he was playing on something that was from his birth year. And I use it as I like the tactile aspects of it, but I do a lot of typewritten notes that I send to people, and it's just different. Especially in this generation, they're like, what the hell is this? I don't know what this type of font is. But it's unique. And so I just ordered him a typewriter, and he got it today. And his caregiver sent me this picture of him. He was already hard at work, just messing with it and just having a blast. I just got him a little one off Amazon, but she was like, "Oh my God, you would have thought you gave him a gold brick." He was just so excited. So, it made me feel good. You can find that spark to connect with, your 90-year-old dad, which is always good. So.
Well, I've got a very quick story to share with you about my mum. So the impact that my journey has had on her, and she always wanted to write a book.
Nice.
And so, late 60s, she wrote, because she'd heard about all my positive affirmation stuff. And so all over the house, she put stickers. I'm a writer. I'm a writer.
I love it.
Anyway, she wrote the book and she published it, and I've never been able to read it because it's a bit too much, I think, because my parents' marriage wasn't the greatest marriage on the planet, and she rewrote her story. She calls it a walk back in time. So my name changed in the book, but I'm not Karen, I'm Crystal. But anyway, fine.
Was that what she wanted to name you originally and just didn't, or what?
I don't know. Well, my dad was a bit of a player, and he loved Karen was the news. No, she was the weather girl on TV.
Okay.
In Gympie in Queensland, where I was born. So So anyway, Mum let him call me Karen. But I think Crystal. But my surname before I was married was Ruby.
Crystal Ruby.
Can you imagine being Crystal Ruby? That's a stripper name. There's no way.
I'm glad you said it. I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to say it.
No. 100% pole dancer, whatever.
Yeah. And there's got to be like a murder mystery attached to that. I mean, you have this whole new persona that you didn't even know you had.
Oh, God. Anyway, but isn't that funny? So it works.
It does.
Works.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. I'm sure, even though you find it hard to read the book, I'm sure you're proud that she accomplished it with the positive affirmation to actually get it done. That's huge.
Maybe when she passes,
I don't
know. But it was just a bit much because at the time they'd just recently separated, and it was a bit too much for me to read. And then interestingly, my dad sent me one, and I haven't read it either. I'm just looking where it is. I put it up in the very top corner. He just wrote a manuscript, and the first line in it is, grandparents are very important in children's lives. And I thought, well, we haven't seen you for 15 years. And I thought, no, I won't be reading that. I'll put it up here.
Well, he's probably he's not inviting you to the book signing, apparently.
And I don't think I'm in the will, so that's okay.
Oh, I love that story. So we definitely have more to talk about for sure, as everybody can see.
We definitely do.
Yeah, I just appreciate you being a part of this episode so much. Sorry for the technical challenges, but we'll figure out what's going on. But
we got there in the end.
Yeah, we made it across, and I'm so grateful. And most importantly, I'm grateful for your friendship and that our lives have connected, and we've got to find some ways to do some stuff together. So I can't wait to explore that. All right, well.
Amazing. Thanks, Steve.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining the Ripple Effect podcast. We'll be back with another episode very soon. But Karen, until then, ripple on.